This morning's scripture you can follow along with in your bulletin, starting with Psalm 1 from the New International Version. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. And in Psalm 4 from the New Revised Standard Version, answer me when I call, O God of my right. You gave me room when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. How long, you people, shall my honor suffer shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? But know that the Lord has set apart the faithful for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. When you are disturbed, do not sin. Ponder it on your beds and be silent. Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. There are many who say, "Oh, that we might see some good." Let the light of your face shine on us, O Lord. You have put gladness in my heart, more than when their grain and wine abound. I will both lie down and sleep in peace, for you alone, O Lord, make me lie down in safety. May God add his blessing to the reading of his word.
Let the people be glad. What a perfect word for this morning's topic and for Psalm 4. Thank you, Kim and Carol and choir. Just beautiful, beautiful. We just want you to be happy. We don't care what you do as long as you are happy. The best gift you children can give us is for you to be happy. If you're happy, I'm happy. We all have heard sentences like these. I suspect that most of us, me included, have said them. Happiness is one of those words that is simply ubiquitous in our culture. Parents want happiness for their children. Spouses want happiness for each other. And advertisers, they compete to see which product can purportedly make you the happiest. McDonald's recent commercial says that if you eat in their restaurants, not only will you simply be happy, you will in fact be able to inhabit a totally alternate reality, a realm of happiness. Writer Joshua Becker says this, quote, "Advertisers often seek to convince us that their products will increase our happiness. From soda and alcohol to fashion and automobiles, happiness is offered to us with our very next purchase. Consider," he says, "the level of boldness some products use in promoting this misconception. Coca-Cola with its open happiness, and Volkswagen, get in, get happy." Of course, ironically, Volkswagen made both itself and thousands of owners very unhappy with its deceptive emissions practices, but that just goes to show you the great length to which a company will sometimes go to entice you to believe that your happiness will be increased when you buy its product. What you may not know, though, is that in anything like we usually use or mean the word, the Bible actually just isn't very interested in whether we are happy or not. What do I mean? Well, let's look more closely at our two Psalms for this morning in this third of our fall sermon series on the Psalms. Psalm 1 begins with the phrase, "Blessed is the one." Let's do a little Bible study here. The word which gets translated as blessed in the New International Version gets translated as happy in other versions. But blessed is a much more appropriate word, even if it sometimes may seem a little vague, a little churchy. After all, these days, the most common use of the word is an expression offered after someone sneezes. But I do believe that the psalmist had to have something deeper in mind than a medieval superstition that without such a blessing, your soul might have left your body when you sneezed, and if you don't get blessed, it won't come back. Did you know that's the origin of that custom? So let's dig a little deeper. What does the word blessing or blessed mean here, and why is it so much more profound a way to translate than is the word happy? The root in Hebrew here comes from a word that means to go in the right direction, to advance and not to retreat, and to make progress. And when we look at the word throughout the rest of the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, we also see that the idea of progress and advancement is almost always tied to the notion of being fruitful. of being creative, of new possibilities coming into being. In its most common usage in the Old Testament, the word blessing is almost always associated with the concept of fertility. God blessed Sarah and Abraham when they were promised that they would have many, many descendants, that they would be fertile, if you will, beyond numbering. But throughout the Scriptures, blessing and even fertility is never just meant in a biological sense. No, fertility is also a metaphor for growth, for the increase of goodness, for the maximizing of the fruits of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, courage. To be a blessing, then, is to live the kind of life that encourages and entices such fruits to grow in your life and in the lives of others. Are you beginning to see why, at least for us 21st century Americans, the notion of mere happiness is just much too puny a goal for our lives? Because our culture has taught us to associate it with the things that we eat or wear or play with or drive. But surely that can't be what God has in mind for those who would seek to know His love and follow His counsels. No, it's not. And the rest of Psalm 1 tells us what makes for a truly blessed life. And that is not to participate in the fashionable scoffing and mocking that so often passes for sophistication, and to instead be one who seeks, like a tree ripe with fruit, to be fertile and offer bountiful goodness in word and action. To return to where we started then, if I were giving advice and counsel to my children now, I would not say, I want you to be happy. No, I would say, I want you to be a blessing to the world. Or in the words of our second psalm this morning, Psalm 4, I would say, I want you to know gladness. Gladness. It's so much more robust than just happy. But how do we do that? How do we achieve it? In the face of a scary world, in the face of a civic season where meanness and mendacity, cruelty and crudity have shouted down civility, in the face of the problems and the challenges that each of us has in our relationships, or in our jobs, or in our economic worries, or in our exhaustion with too many things to do and too little time, how do we achieve such gladness? Well, our situation is really very much the same as the writer of Psalm 4 describes. The psalm was written by a man or perhaps a woman who was feeling beset and besieged, disturbed, depressed, distressed. And what does the psalmist say? And what steps can you and I take to find such gladness that God promises can be ours, even in the face of the fact that we may not feel happy at all? Well, I would counsel 4 things that we can do that will indeed deepen our gladness and deepen our ability to be a blessing to ourselves and to this world. First, the psalmist puts it this way: when you are disturbed, do not sin, ponder it on your beds and be silent. In other words, if you would know gladness, avoid that temptation, that oh so seductive temptation to lash out at others with words that you can never take back. Avoid the temptation to look for someone to blame for whatever situation you're in. Avoid the temptation to let fearfulness drive you. As one preacher rightly puts it, quote, "We know what it's like to have one of those nights when we pace the room and are oh so carefully crafting our retort to somebody, trying with all of our adult reasoning to convince our emotions to calm down." Because such a retort will likely not add to your gladness, will it? And so the first step when life has you depressed, dispirited, or disturbed is indeed to ponder and pray on it in silence. The second step is this: practice gratitude. Even if you don't feel grateful, practice gratitude. Study after study have shown that expressing gratitude, even when you are not feeling grateful, actually can give you a sense of peace and can change your feelings. Researchers in one study randomly assigned one group of participants to keep a short weekly list of the things that they were grateful for. And the other group kept a list of all the things that annoyed them. 10 weeks later, the first group enjoyed significantly greater satisfaction with their lives than the others. Other studies have shown the same patterns and lead to the same conclusion. In a nutshell, as one of them says, acting grateful can actually make you grateful, which is surely to know gladness. The same writer who shared this research study counsels some very specific ways that you and I can practice such gratitude, practices that can increase our gladness. He suggests, for example, that every morning or evening, if you're a night person, every morning you email or text one or two people a brief line or two telling them why you are thankful for them. He also says to cultivate the daily habit of simply becoming grateful for what he calls useless things. For example, he says, notice the fascinating, if totally useless way the rain dimples on the hood of your freshly washed car. Take delight in the symmetry of the sunrise and sunset twice a year, exactly aligned with the street. Be fascinated by the way the clouds come over the mountain in such wonderful, beautiful, useless shapes. Lesson 2, practice gratitude. If you would want to know more of the gladness that the psalmist speaks of, then lesson 3 is this: work on making sure that what increases your gladness and gives you joy is in fact in sync with the way you spend your time. Most of us aren't very good at that. As one writer puts it, quote, most people suffer grave misalignment in this regard. And he notes that in 2004, a team of scholars surveyed a group of women to compare how much satisfaction they derived from all of their daily activities. We might expect that how they spent their time would line up with their sense of satisfaction. Not so. The women reported deriving the most satisfaction from prayer, worship, and meditation than from watching television. Yet the average woman respondent spent more than 5 times watching TV as they did engaging in those other activities. And in 2014, a study showed that, quote, the average American adult spent 4 times longer watching television than socializing and communicating, and 20 times longer on TV than on religious or spiritual or meditative activities. And as the great sociologist Robert Putnam has shown in his landmark study and bestseller, Bowling Alone, one of the greatest enemies of a sense of satisfaction is an inordinate amount of time spent in front of a television screen. What's wrong with this picture? Pun intended. Well, as the writer puts it, too often, quote, we mindlessly blow the present moment on low-value activities. Activities that don't lead to that sense of gladness that the psalmist spoke of, and which often don't even make us happier. Finally, lesson 4. If you would know more of that gladness, seek out ways to serve others. Religious writer and poet Frederick Buechner says this, quote, the place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. The place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. There are plenty of hungry places in this world. Some of you seek to assuage that hunger and have your gladness meet up with that hunger when you volunteer at ESM. Some of you have just this week helped our church house homeless families. Some of you dropped everything to build a ramp for a church member in need. Some of you give sacrificially of your time and your money. And at least one of you, I know, prays for each person in our church by name every day. Know this. God has gifted you and placed you in a world where your gifts can make a difference. And never, ever, ever think that you are too small or too poor or too insignificant to make any difference. That's never true. And there is indeed a hungering in some part of our world for what you have to share. And it will make you glad. You have put gladness in my heart. I will lie down and sleep in peace, for you alone, O Lord, make me lie down in safety. And we might say, you alone, O God, can help make us glad, not merely happy. May it be so. Amen.